Go shorty, it's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday. We gon' sip Bacardi like it's your birthday. And you know we don't give up, it's not your birthday. You'll find me in the club, bottle full of bug. Mama, I got what you need if you need to fill a bug.
One of the things I love about dirt bikes is I'm constantly learning, or even sometimes relearning things that I knew in the past. Let's talk about some of the things I've learned about the 24 XCW. Again, everybody knows that this was like a brand new platform for the XCW, and there's so many changes. We talked a little bit about the motor, which I'm going to get into, but I want to talk today about the rear end traction and some things that I've found that make this bike so much better for me. Because in the first little bit when I was riding it, I was having a hard time getting traction to that wheel on like loose, rocky hill climbs. And I was a little bit frustrated. It was probably my biggest frustration with the bike. It seems like they biased this bike so much more towards the front wheel that I wasn't getting any traction on the rear wheel. So here's what I did. I actually increased my sag a little bit. Now, I know the manual actually says you should go to 110 millimeters of sag, but I was just on kind of like default mode, and I went to 105 millimeters of sag and then set like my compression and rebound all the way through, just like the manual said. Well, I wasn't getting the traction that I needed. So I've increased to about 111 millimeters of sag on this bike and then sped up my rebound on that rear shock. And that made all the difference. It's absolutely incredible how much just a little bit more sag, because on a lot of times, like I would try different sag settings on different bikes and I didn't feel really a lot of difference, but on this bike I did. 5-6 more millimeters of sag and then a faster rebound to get that rear tire back down to the ground has made a huge impact in the amount of traction that I have on those hill climbs. So put that in your book and do that with your bike if you're struggling. If you're at only 105 millimeters of sag, go to at least 110, maybe 110, 111, and see what that does for you. And then try speeding up your rebound. It's interesting because on this bike, well, in the previous years, I'm pretty sure that the XCW had what is known as like a progressive spring rate. Where this is a straight spring rate. Now, I don't want to get into like the nitty gritty of all that because I don't fully understand it myself, but I think this is just a little bit stiffer on the rear end. I shouldn't even say stiffer. It's just different than it was before. So progressive spring versus a standard rate spring. And now this is requiring a little bit faster rebound. I think if you set it up the way that the manual says, this is why it's fun to do just trial and error, because yes, I think the manual has it right for the sag, but I don't think the manual has it right for the speed of rebound that we need on that rear tire. Let's talk a little bit more about the power, because I know I even said like, hey, where's the power? Here's what I want to say after I've now ridden the bike several times. The power is all there. There is more than enough power in this bike, and it probably has just as much or slightly more power than the TPI bikes before it. It's just not mapped as hot. So there's some of that, some of the aggressive two-stroke nature has just been kind of mellowed off on this. This doesn't run as hot as the XC bike anymore. Like in years past, the XCs and the XCWs pretty much ran about the same. Now they don't. So there's a lot of power in this motor. It's just been mapped for much more smooth trackability. And as I've been riding some technical-ish stuff and some like more and more stuff, I'm like, the power is actually really, really good. So I kind of, I've got like a double-edged sword on this, because I feel like a lot of people are still saying like, how do I make my XCW run like an XC? But I don't think that's what they want. I don't think that's what we need, is what I'm saying. I think this bike is actually supposed to be just much smoother for more mellow power delivery. And I think I'm getting better traction. I think it's easier for me to go through things just with that, okay? So I'm also going to try different gearing. It comes with, I believe this is it's a 1345. Am I just being right? Yeah, 1345. I tried my buddy's, Tyler's bike. He put like a 48 tooth sprocket on this just to try, which would gear it down. I know that sounds weird, but the bike, that made first gear super, super low, which made it unusable for a lot of things, but it actually made second gear a little bit more usable. I think I'm going to go with a 47 tooth sprocket on this, just kind of cut the difference a little bit, add a couple of teeth on the back and just see that, just kind of playing around with it, because this transmission is different. The final drive is different than what we've had before. So I'm going to play around a little bit with that and just kind of see how I feel with a 47 tooth, and I'll get back to you on kind of how that works out. Let's talk about the fork. Seriously, and this isn't a full review of the bike, it's just me expressing some of the things I've been learning about it. That fork, it's the closed cartridge spring fork on this bike. It is the best fork I've ever had on any stock motorcycle. The only fork that I've had that I like better than this, and that is my freaking cone valve fork that was custom valve for me by Moto Experts. But that whole setup is bloody expensive. This is straight out of the box stock. In the last couple of rides, I've just been like, it is freaking video game good. Like, that is an amazing fork. If you haven't tried that, this closed cartridge 2024 exact spring fork, holy Jezebel. That is a freaking good fork. Now, these bikes feel a little bit more front end biased, as I said before, a little bit more front end heavy. It doesn't feel quite as agile. It doesn't feel quite as nimble as the older TPI bikes did, the older gen frame. And it doesn't turn as tight, which I'm not happy about. But that freaking fork, holy crap, these are bangers. Those are absolute bangers. So now that I've got it where I'm getting more used to the smooth power, I'm now getting more traction on that rear wheel by having more sag than I had. 105 millimeters wasn't enough sag for this thing. I needed more, 110, 111. And then speeding up my rebound on this dial back here on the shock, the bike's really, really good. You know, and so I love how with these things, I mean, I know bike setup is important, but sometimes you just kind of get stuck in a rut of how, like, I'm setting this bike up this way, this bike up this way, this bike up this way, and it was working. Well, it didn't work with this bike, and then I set it up a little bit differently, and I'm like, dang, this is good. And so these bikes, there's so much that we can do to them, and there's so much cool stuff that you can learn about every bike and every model, and I'm just really, really tickled with it. Hey, if you watched this deep into the video, I know you're a true fan of DBC. I just want to say, hey, if you want to support what we're doing, probably the best way to do it is use my links to Rocky Mountain ATV. They're down in the video description. They're in pretty much all my emails. And it's over on dirtbikechannel.com. There's this little thing that says Shop Rocky Mountain ATV. They are the best in the business. You can't beat them. If you can't beat them, join them. I buy basically all my parts. Anything that they have in stock, if I'm looking for it, gear, parts, tires, I go through Rocky Mountain ATV. And if you'd use my link, that would be fantastic. This bike is also going to be a sweepstakes bike in September. So I'll be giving this bike away. So don't buy anything on my website until September because it'll get you entries in for this. And I'm also giving away my 2023 250XC right over there. So those bikes will be up for grabs in September. It's going to be super fun. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. But yeah, pretty freaking awesome bike. I'm already on my third tire on this thing because I've just been testing stuff. But yeah, I should have mentioned range on this. Anyway, maybe I'll do that in another video. But yeah, pretty excited about the bike. Still love dirt bikes. Still love this gig. And until next time, leave a single track.